was a cool spring morning in Wenatchee, Washington, the kind of quiet, leafy suburb where people still left their doors unlocked and trusted their neighbors. On the surface, nothing appeared out of place. In a modest beige duplex near the edge of town, three little girls waited eagerly by the window, backpacks slung over their tiny shoulders, eyes darting every few seconds toward the driveway. They weren't just waiting for anyone. They were waiting for Dad. Travis Decker's red truck pulled in right on time, as it always did during his court-ordered visitation weekends. 9-year-old Peyton was the first to run out, followed closely by Evelyn, 8, and 5-year-old Olivia, whose tiny arms barely managed to wrap around her father's broad frame. Travis knelt down to hug them all at once, rough hands, military strong, gently ruffling their hair. To the outside world, it was a picture of normalcy, maybe even love. For those who knew him before everything unraveled, Travis was that kind of father. The dad who showed up at school plays, who coached youth sports, who camped under the stars with his girls, and taught them how to make fires with flint and dried moss. His Instagram, before it went dark, was filled with photos of smiling faces in the mountains, muddy hiking boots, and pancake breakfasts at sunrise. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, and deeply devoted to his children. He adored those girls, said one. You could see it in how he looked at them, like they were his whole world. But that was the part of Travis Decker most people saw. It wasn't the whole story. Behind the scenes, things had been unraveling for months, maybe years. The smile he wore for his daughters was hiding something darker. His ex-wife had seen it. The courts had heard it. Friends had begun to sense it too. A shift, an unease. No one knew that this visit on May 30th, 2025 would be the last time anyone would see the girls alive. And no one yet understood just how far Travis Decker was willing to go to keep them or to lose everything. Before Travis Decker was the subject of a nationwide manhunt, before his name was splashed across headlines as the father accused of an unthinkable act, he was a soldier. Born in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, Travis came of age in a town that raised boys to be tough and patriotic. His father had served, his grandfather too. Joining the military wasn't just a choice for Travis, it was a legacy. In 2012, at just 19, he enlisted in the U.S. Army. By 2014, he was deployed to Afghanistan with the 503rd Infantry Regiment, part of the 173rd Airborne Brigade. It was real combat, not the kind that could be glamorized or shrugged off. In the valleys and villages of Afghanistan, Travis saw death, violence, and the slow unraveling of any belief that the world was fair. When he returned, he brought medals and something else, something quieter. He wouldn't talk about the missions. He joked that sleeping in silence felt too strange, that he needed noise. He told his wife sometimes that he dreamt in deserts, but other times he just didn't speak at all. After a second posting in Vicenza, Italy, Travis left the army in 2018. He came home to Wenatchee to be with his wife and raise his daughters. But the soldier never truly left the war behind. Those who knew him back then say he was different. Not violent, not cruel, just disconnected. The man who once led platoons became fixated on prepping supplies, collecting maps, keeping bug-out bags packed and ready. At first, it was shrugged off as a habit. Army training, he'd say. But over time, it became clear he wasn't preparing for a mission. He was preparing for something else, something he never named. In 2021, he was formally diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. A year later, borderline personality disorder. He attended some counseling, took his prescriptions, sometimes. But like many veterans who fall through the cracks, Travis began to self-isolate. By 2023, his marriage had collapsed. His ex-wife filed for full custody of the girls, citing mental instability and emotional volatility. A court-ordered psychological assessment confirmed her concerns, but Travis was still granted supervised visitation, and eventually unsupervised weekends. It's a decision that haunts everyone now. In the eyes of the law, Travis was a father struggling, not a threat. But in the mind of a soldier trained to survive and conditioned to hide pain, danger was quietly forming in the shadows. And soon, that danger would become impossible to ignore. By the time the custody battle began in 2023, the love between Travis Decker and his wife had already faded into bitterness, replaced by silence, fear, and paperwork. On the surface, the breakdown seemed like so many others. A young couple burdened by trauma and time, drifting further apart until there was nothing left but memories and shared responsibility. But for those closest to them, there were warning signs that this wasn't just another divorce. Travis had changed. According to court records and later interviews, his behavior had grown unpredictable. He would lapse into long, brooding silences, obsess over strange things, escape routes, cabin listings deep in the woods, Canadian visa requirements. Some days he was warm and attentive with the girls. Other days he was cold, absent, almost vacant. His ex-wife, who had initially tried to support him through his post-military struggles, began to fear what he was becoming. In custody filings, she alleged emotional instability, paranoia, and increasingly erratic behavior. She didn't accuse him of violence, not yet, but she told the court she no longer felt safe leaving the children alone with him. A psychological assessment was ordered. Travis cooperated, but barely. The results were troubling. The court psychologist noted signs of unprocessed trauma, emotional volatility, and narcissistic tendencies. He wasn't deemed an immediate threat, but he wasn't stable either. The recommendation was cautious visitation, with periodic reviews. The judge agreed. At first, Travis was granted only supervised visits, monitored, brief, and observed. But he played the part well. He smiled, he stayed calm, he brought snacks and coloring books. Over time, those visits were extended. Eventually, supervision was lifted. Travis was given overnight custody every other weekend. It felt to some like the system was trying to do right by a father who hadn't committed a crime. He had served his country. He had no record. He showed up on time. He didn't raise his voice. But behind the scenes, his online search history told a different story. Later forensic analysis of his computer revealed he'd been researching parental alienation, borderline personality disorder, custody loss, how to disappear in the Pacific Northwest. Can CPS take your kids for mental illness? Suicide notes without blame. He had also been studying maps, the remote terrain of the Cascade Mountains, survival trails, off-grid shelters, and national forest boundaries near the Canadian border. To the outside world, Travis Decker was a father trying to reclaim his place in his daughters' lives. But to those reading between the lines, he was a man slowly losing his grip, and maybe preparing for something no court ruling could stop. The war for custody was over. He had lost. Friday morning began like so many before it. The sky was pale and overcast in Wenatchee, and the rain from the night before still clung to the sidewalks. School had just let out for the summer, and 3 little girls were buzzing with excitement for their weekend with Dad. 9-year-old Peyton packed her favorite chapter book. Evelyn, 8, brought her sketch pad. She'd been working on a drawing of their family dog. And Olivia, just 5 years old, carried a stuffed fox that never left her side. At exactly 9 a.m., Travis Decker arrived to pick them up. His red pickup truck idled briefly at the curb, then came to a full stop. He stepped out, calm, clean-shaven, dressed in a green windbreaker and hiking boots. From a distance, he looked like any other weekend dad, tired maybe, but steady. His ex-wife watched from the doorway as the girls hugged him. She hesitated before handing over their overnight bags, her eyes searching his for something. Reassurance, a flicker of stability. If there was a warning sign, she didn't see it. The court order was clear. He had the girls until Sunday evening. She made him promise, really promise, to bring them home on time. He smiled and said, "Of course." That was the last time she saw them alive. Travis didn't take them to the movies or the lake or the playground. Instead, he headed west, away from town, away from traffic, and deep into the forested valleys of Chelan County. He turned off his phone shortly after noon. The GPS data ends there. Later, police would find receipts, gas, bottled water, trail mix, a new roll of duct tape, a spade, children's cold weather jackets purchased just a week earlier. He had packed a tent, matches, a solar charger, and a loaded 9mm pistol, all stored neatly in the back of the truck beneath a tarp. He also brought something else, a goodbye letter, never mailed, never signed, but typed, printed, and tucked into a folder in the glove box. "They don't deserve this world, and I don't want to live in it anymore. I'm sorry." By Saturday evening, his ex-wife began calling, no answer. By Sunday night, panic turned to dread. He hadn't shown up. The girls didn't come home. She called 911. The report was logged as a parental abduction, urgent but not immediately violent. Officers visited Travis's home. It was empty. His phone was still off. There were no signs of the girls. A be on the lookout alert was issued for Travis Decker and his red truck. But by then, they were already gone, vanishing into the dense green lungs of Washington state. It would take 2 more days for the truth to surface, and when it did, it would break the hearts of a nation. The first 24 hours were filled with hope. Maybe Travis had lost track of time. Maybe they'd gone camping and his phone had died. Maybe he just needed space. It was easy to tell yourself those things when you were a mother standing in a kitchen filled with 3 untouched lunchboxes. But by Monday morning, May 31st, that hope was unraveling. There were no updates, no calls, no pings from his phone. His social media, once filled with photos of hiking trails and his daughter's smiles, remained silent. His neighbors hadn't seen him. His mail was untouched. The sheriff's office classified the case as a potential custodial interference, serious but not uncommon. Parents in custody disputes sometimes disappeared with their children for a day or two, sometimes out of panic, sometimes out of spite. But this felt different. On June 1st, law enforcement escalated the alert, issuing a regional bulletin with Travis Decker's photo. The 3 girls, Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia, were listed as missing children. The community mobilized quickly. Volunteers printed flyers. Local search parties began checking trailheads, campsites, and forest roads. Dozens of people combed the edges of the Cascades, calling the girls' names through the trees. At the family home, time stood still. Their mother sat on the porch for hours, waiting for a phone to ring or headlights to appear at the end of the street. She barely spoke. Friends brought food she wouldn't eat. The girls' bedrooms remained untouched, their stuffed animals perched neatly on the pillows. By the evening of June 1st, the case had drawn the attention of state authorities. Drones and helicopters were dispatched to the eastern edge of the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest, where forest rangers had reported a parked truck days earlier. It was found the next morning, June 2nd, 6:17 a.m. Travis's truck was parked on a remote logging road near Chickaman Ridge, partially hidden under tree branches and a camouflaged tarp. Its tires were muddy, the gas tank nearly empty. Inside, wrappers, rope, trail gear, and a half-empty bottle of water, but no sign of the girls. Then came the blood. Search teams fanned out through the surrounding area. About 200 yards down a wooded slope, they found disturbed soil, a shallow trench, and 3 small, tightly wrapped bodies beneath layers of brush and pine needles. It was them. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia had been suffocated. No gunshot wounds, no blunt force trauma, just silence and finality. Their cause of death was ruled homicide. The autopsy suggested it had happened within hours of the pickup, and Travis Decker was gone. In an instant, the case shifted from a missing persons report to a triple murder investigation and a manhunt. One of the most chilling in recent Washington history was about to begin. The forest was still when they found them. No wind, no bird song, just the distant crunch of boots on pine needles and the low hum of a search drone circling overhead. The air on Chickaman Ridge that June morning was damp and heavy, like it knew. Deputies from the Chelan County Sheriff's Office were following a narrow game trail when they noticed something out of place, a patch of disturbed earth beneath a tangle of bracken and moss. The brush had been clumsily pulled over a low trench. It didn't take long to confirm what they feared. Beneath the soil were the three bodies, small, wrapped tightly in camping tarps and children's blankets. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. Their faces were peaceful, hauntingly so. There were no bruises, no blood, just the quiet stillness of lives cut short. The autopsy report, released quietly days later, confirmed what investigators already suspected. Each girl had been suffocated, likely by hand. There were no drugs in their systems, no defensive wounds, no signs they'd tried to run. Experts said they probably never saw it coming. The burial site was crude, a shallow grave, hurriedly covered. Whoever dug it had either been in a rush or injured, maybe both. Investigators found traces of blood nearby, not belonging to the girls. It matched Travis Decker. They also found a bloodied boot print leading downhill and a torn piece of Travis's jacket snagged on a branch. It wasn't much, but it told them one thing. He was on foot, and he was trying to vanish. Inside the truck, investigators found more clues. A handwritten checklist, water tablets, canned meat, bear spray, 2 lighters, solar charger, maps, Washington and Idaho. There was no wallet, no phone, no ID. The gun registered in his name, a 9mm, was missing from the glove compartment. What struck investigators most wasn't what Travis left behind, it was what he didn't. There were no goodbye notes to the girls, no remorse, no explanations. Only a typed page in his glove box, folded neatly in half. They were my world, but the world is broken. I had to protect them from it. I'll see them again someday. Within hours, Travis Decker was declared armed and extremely dangerous. A multi-agency manhunt was launched across Washington's vast wilderness. U.S. Marshals, forest rangers, K-9 units, and drones were deployed. But the forest had already swallowed him. No one knew if he was alive, wounded, hiding, or dead. The only thing they knew for sure was this. The man who loved his daughters had killed them, and now he was gone. When the sun rose over the Cascades on June 3rd, the forest had a new name whispered through its trees. Fugitive. Travis Decker, former soldier, father of 3, and now wanted for triple murder, had vanished into one of the most rugged wildernesses in the continental United States. Law enforcement wasn't underestimating him. "This isn't a guy who got lost in the woods," said Chelan County Sheriff Mike Morrison. "He trained for this. He planned this." The region surrounding Chickaman Ridge isn't just forest, it's 4,000 square miles of steep ravines, alpine lakes, caves, logging roads, and wild country where cell phone signals go to die. Black bears roam freely. Temperatures drop below freezing at night, even in summer. It's a survivalist's playground, or tomb. Decker knew that. He had lived off-grid before, briefly in 2022, after what his ex-wife later described as a mental crash. Friends say he once hiked for 8 days without seeing another person, returning with nothing but a knife, a tarp, and a story about sleeping inside a hollow tree during a thunderstorm. He also had military survival training, including cold weather escape scenarios and advanced land navigation. So when officers found no trails, no footprints, and no digital breadcrumbs, they weren't surprised. Over 150 personnel were mobilized. Helicopters swept the ridge lines. Drones scanned thermal signatures from the sky. K-9 units worked long shifts in dense brush, hampered by the scent of wildlife and decaying vegetation. They found a few things: a boot print matching Travis's size and tread, a makeshift shelter of branches and moss, still warm when discovered, an empty granola wrapper, a brand found in his truck, a partial blood trail, faded and scattered after heavy rainfall. But they didn't find him, not even close. The theory emerged quickly. He was on the move. Psychologists weighed in on national news. Some believed Travis was suicidal, a father who had snapped and would likely die in the wilderness. Others said he was acting with narcissistic intent, not running from the law, but rewriting the story, making himself into a martyr, a ghost. His ex-wife issued a statement on June 4th. "I want the world to remember my girls, not the man who stole them. Peyton, Evelyn, Olivia, they were kind, smart, and they loved him. They trusted him, and he broke them." The statement went viral. Public rage grew, so did fear. If Travis was injured and desperate, he might strike again. If he wasn't injured at all, he could be anywhere. By June 6th, tips began trickling in. A lone man spotted heading north through the Alpine Lakes wilderness. A hunter who swore he heard someone whispering nearby in the dark. A discarded jacket, half buried near a stream. All unconfirmed, all chilling. The U.S. Marshals joined the hunt by June 8th. They issued a federal arrest warrant for first-degree murder, custodial interference, and unlawful flight. A $20,000 reward was offered. Travis Decker is not just missing, one federal agent said. He's hiding. The manhunt had taken over the headlines, but the real question echoed behind every press conference, every tip line, every mother's sobbing plea. Who was Travis Decker really? And how does a father, by all accounts loving, loyal, and present, become a child killer? In his early 20s, Travis was the kind of guy other soldiers followed without hesitation. He was sharp, self-contained, and oddly calm in chaos. Those who served with him during his 2014 deployment to Afghanistan remembered him as reliable under fire, protective of his team, and incredibly private. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, said one former squad mate. But if you were pinned down, you wanted him beside you. But when he came home, that same tight-lipped focus turned inward. The structure of war was gone. Civilian life felt chaotic, meaningless. He struggled, quietly at first, drinking alone, canceling plans, fixating on control. He kept emergency gear in his car, always carried a knife, learned to make snares, purify water from mud, memorize terrain by satellite view. By 2020, Travis was no longer a soldier, but he never really became a civilian either. When his daughters were born, something in him softened. Friends say he lit up around them. He painted Evelyn's bedroom purple himself. He taught Peyton how to track animal prints. He carried Olivia everywhere until she could walk, then still lifted her when she asked. But that love came with edges. His ex-wife described him as obsessively protective. He didn't want the girls at sleepovers, didn't trust babysitters, insisted they always keep a whistle in their backpack. At first, she thought it was post-war trauma, but it started to feel darker, like the world wasn't just unsafe to Travis, it was evil. She said he became convinced that if he lost custody, the system would destroy the girls, that she would, that society would take their souls. He didn't yell, he didn't hit, he just stopped listening to reason. In 2022, a clinical psychologist diagnosed Travis with borderline personality disorder, layered on top of PTSD. It explained a lot: the intense emotional swings, the fear of abandonment, the black and white thinking where people were either saviors or enemies. But Travis rejected the diagnosis. He said it was an excuse. He called the therapist a gatekeeper. He stopped taking medication. He began reading anti-psychiatry blogs and survivalist forums. He told one friend, "They want to say I'm sick so they can take my kids away. I'm not crazy. I just see what's coming." His world was shrinking. And in that world, Travis believed he was the last line of defense between his daughters and destruction. To neighbors, he was quiet but pleasant. He waved, helped shovel snow, played catch with the girls in the front yard. But inside his house were notebooks filled with paranoid scribbles, maps with escape routes, journal entries where he wrote to his daughters in past tense as if he knew a goodbye was coming. He had two versions of himself: the doting father who tucked his daughters in at night, and the man rehearsing vanishing acts in the dark. In the end, the line between them broke, and no one, not his friends, not his family, not even Travis, could put it back together. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became. Travis Decker had disappeared into the wilderness on purpose, not as a panicked man running from consequences, but as a man executing a plan. From the abandoned vehicle on the forest road, they began mapping possible exit paths, deer trails, logging cuts, and hidden switchbacks known only to experienced hikers. They weren't just tracking a fugitive, they were chasing a ghost. Travis had a head start of at least 2 days. No GPS, no active phone, no credit card use, and no sightings. But he'd left something else behind: knowledge. Authorities later learned that in the weeks before the murders, Travis had downloaded topographical maps of the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest, read survival guides on alpine shelters, edible plants, and hypothermia avoidance, purchased gear consistent with long-term wilderness survival, watched YouTube videos on how to mask scent from dogs and create false trails. He didn't run blindly. He ran intentionally. By June 5th, local teams were joined by U.S. Marshals and federal tracking experts. They used helicopters with thermal imaging, drone surveillance, and even infrared-equipped aircraft from nearby military bases. The forest, however, seemed to close in tighter with every passing day. There are hundreds of caves, old mining tunnels, and glacier-fed creeks out here, one ranger said. If you wanted to vanish, this is where you'd do it. Over the next 2 weeks, the following clues emerged: a makeshift shelter built from branches and insulated with ferns, a snare trap set along a known deer path, a trail of blood droplets, likely from an injury to his left leg, a torn piece of jacket fabric, same brand and color he wore at the time of the abduction, but no Decker, no footprints, no heat signature, no sign of movement. It was as if he'd sunk into the forest floor. Some believed he was still alive, evading capture. Injured, maybe, but alive. Others thought he may have already died of exposure or infection, possibly in a ravine no one had reached. And then there were the darker theories, that he had an accomplice waiting, that he'd escaped the national forest entirely, that he was watching unseen as the search continued. Each day the search grew more desperate, each night colder. The marshals eventually pulled back their air support. The drones flew less frequently, and the scent trails went cold. The wilderness had won, for now. But Travis Decker hadn't just run into the wild. He had prepared to become part of it. For 2 weeks there was nothing but silence, no movement, no signs, no voice calling out from the wilderness. Travis Decker had all but vanished, a name without a face, a fugitive without a trail. But then in mid-June, that silence cracked. The sightings began. June 18th, nearly 3 weeks after the girls were found, a nurse in Idaho City walked into the sheriff's office, shaken. She said she'd seen a man in the trees outside her remote cabin the night before. He was filthy, thin, carrying a bundle of something, maybe gear, maybe clothing. He hadn't approached her. He just stood at the edge of the tree line, watching. I saw the tattoos on his forearm, she said. I recognized the face from the news. It was him. Authorities took the report, but at first they didn't act. After all, Idaho City was over 400 miles from Chickaman Ridge. To get there on foot, especially injured, seemed nearly impossible. But then another tip. July 5th, a family hiking through the Sawtooth National Forest in Idaho claimed to have spotted a man crouched near a stream, partially hidden behind a fallen log. He stood up when he noticed them. didn't speak, but didn't run either. They said he had a ponytail, a scar above his right eyebrow, and tattoos matching Decker's, a series of coordinates and a compass rose. He was carrying a bow, homemade maybe, and appeared gaunt but alert. He just looked at us, the father of the family said. Then he disappeared back into the trees like it was second nature. This time, U.S. Marshals took it seriously. The very next day, tactical teams moved into the forest. Helicopters hovered above the treetops. Agents canvassed the small towns nearby, interviewing hikers and park rangers. Local residents were warned, do not approach. Travis Decker is armed, dangerous, and may be in a desperate survival state. Campgrounds were shut down, trailheads were watched, but again, nothing. The search turned up a lone hiker with similar features, but not Travis. By July 9th, the Idaho Forest search was officially scaled back. We chased a very real lead, said Marshal Eric Gaines, but at this time, we don't believe he's in that area. Once again, Decker had slipped away, or never been there at all. The sightings raised more questions than answers. Had he traveled 400-plus miles on foot while injured? Did he hitchhike without being noticed? Or was it a case of mass paranoia, people seeing ghosts where guilt lived? Some speculated he may have stashed a dirt bike or mountain bike before fleeing. Others believed he had help. A small but persistent group even believed he was watching the search unfold, mocking them from the treetops. By July's end, the manhunt had slowed. The helicopters had flown home, the marshals redirected to other cases, and the forest, so loud with boots and shouts just weeks before, fell quiet again. But the question still hung in the air, thick and inescapable. Where is Travis Decker? Many investigators believe Travis died in the forest, likely from his injuries or exposure or suicide. Blood found at the burial site and near the trailhead. No confirmed sightings after July 5th. No bank activity, no phone, no stolen vehicles. His journal entries spoke often of seeing them again and this world ending. Some believe he climbed to a ridge and jumped, or took his own life with a 9mm pistol that has never been recovered. If that's true, his body may never be found, hidden by brush, scattered by animals, or resting at the bottom of a ravine no one searched. But there's a problem. No body, no trace, no closure. And for a man who planned everything so meticulously, would he really leave it that open-ended? Others believe Decker is still out there, alive, injured or not, surviving in the backcountry. The evidence, shelters and snares found deep in the forest, handwritten maps and survival notes in his abandoned truck, confirmed training in navigation, wilderness concealment, and extended living off-grid. His mental state, paranoid, narcissistic, possibly delusional, but highly motivated to avoid capture. This theory paints Decker not as a desperate fugitive, but as a true believer. He didn't just run into the woods. He became the woods. A man who sees the system as broken, and who, in his fractured worldview, believes he saved his daughters by taking them out of it. A third, more sinister theory. He had help, a friend, a sympathizer, a prepper community. There were rumors of online connections, chat rooms and encrypted messages, with groups that viewed courts, CPS, and mental health systems as tyrannical. Travis had posted anonymously on several such boards before going dark. Could someone have picked him up along a remote road, hidden him, given him a new name, a place to disappear? It sounds like conspiracy, until you remember how well he planned every step leading to the girls' deaths. The gear, the maps, the timing. If anyone could slip the net with help, it was him. What was the motive? Why would a father murder his daughters? It's a question that breaks people when they ask it. A question with no satisfying answer. But psychologists point to a terrifying possibility: control. In Decker's mind, warped by trauma, disorder, and paranoia, he may have believed the world was poisoning his children, that by taking them with him, he was saving them. And once he did it, he couldn't come back. He crossed the point of no return, and then he vanished. Did the system fail to protect those girls? Were the warning signs ignored? Could someone else have stopped this? And most agonizing of all, will we ever know the full truth? It's been months now. The search teams are gone, the forest is quiet, but one fact still lingers like smoke in the air. Travis Decker is still out there. Maybe he's dead, buried beneath leaves and soil, a forgotten body in a forgotten corner of the Cascades. Or maybe he's alive, ragged and half feral, living in silence, sustained by instinct, memory, and whatever guilt hasn't turned to ash. As of now, the U.S. Marshals continue to list Decker as armed and dangerous and wanted for the murder of his 3 children. There's a $20,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. His face remains on missing posters across Washington, Idaho, and Oregon, though many are sun-bleached and torn now, flapping quietly in the wind near ranger stations and gas station corkboards. His ex-wife, who has asked to remain unnamed, moved out of Wenatchee shortly after the funerals. Her public statement was brief, final. They were my babies. I will never forgive him. But I hope he's found. I hope he's brought back in handcuffs, or not at all. She now lives in anonymity, surrounded by photos of her daughters. A toy fox sits on her fireplace. 3 small shoes remain untouched in a hallway closet. Time, for her, doesn't move forward. It just circles. In the months that followed the murders, people across the region began double-checking locks and glancing over their shoulders on hikes. Travis Decker became a ghost story in the real world, a modern myth whispered across campfires and rest stops. Did you hear they saw him in Idaho again? I heard he's living in a cave, off-grid. No way he's alive. He couldn't have survived winter. No one knows. And that's what makes him so terrifying. This was never just the story of a man who vanished. It was the story of a man who broke and took everything good with him. Travis Decker was a father, a soldier, a protector, until he wasn't. Now, his name lives in the same breath as grief. 3 headstones mark what's left behind. Peyton Lee Decker, 9 years old, loved books and climbing trees. Evelyn Grace Decker, 8 years old, wanted to be an artist. Olivia Hope Decker, 5 years old. They trusted him, they loved him, and he stole their futures. If you have any information about the whereabouts of Travis Lee Decker, contact the U.S. Marshals Service or your local authorities. 200 pounds, with brown hair, hazel eyes, and distinct tattoos on both arms, including a compass, GPS coordinates, and military insignia. His daughters deserve justice. And this story, unfinished, still waits for its final chapter.